Happiness. The desire for happiness is one such innate feeling that we all share. I don't think so there would be any person on this earth who, when asked, "Do you want to be happy?" would answer no. Everyone seems to be chasing happiness. So why is it that it seems like no one is happy in these times?
Depression rates are at an all-time high. A third of adults report being diagnosed with depression sometime during their lifetimes, a figure that is rising.
What even is happiness? Turns out science has some answers. There's this new field called the science of happiness, which has discovered what does and what does not make a person happy. Then there were the Greeks. They extensively wrote and discussed about how giving up the pursuit of pleasure leads to a more fulfilling and virtuous life. And finally, the East. The smart fuckers here in East believed that we can be happy and content in this very moment. Let's explore all these different perspectives on happiness, and perhaps we can apply some of these in our daily lives to be happier. We work on our goals to be eventually happy. I mean, it makes sense, right? If we want something, let's pursue it and make it happen. But as it turns out, paradoxically, chasing happiness makes us more lonely, more miserable, and less happy. A research named The Pursuit of Happiness Makes Us Lonely among 206 people found out the more a person valued happiness, the more likely they were to be lonely. And interestingly, when people were made to value happiness more by showing them articles which glorified it, it led to a greater loneliness. That just reminds me of advertising. Do you ever think I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when I get that job. I'll be happy when I earn X amount of money. I'll be happy when I gain 1,000 subscribers. Please subscribe. We hold this presumption that reaching our career goals would lead to more happiness. And this was looked into a research called "Does Happiness Promote Career Success?" It was concluded after looking into several researches and studies that happiness is what leads to more career success and not the other way around. So if this were a chicken and an egg problem, the egg wins. So happiness leads to success, and chasing happiness makes us more miserable. Sounds like a paradox, right? According to science, these are the 6 things that we can focus on a regular basis instead of chasing happiness to become happier. Number 6, accepting painful emotions. Positive psychology says that when we accept the painful emotions as a part of being alive and we give ourselves the permission of experiencing the full spectrum of emotions, paradoxically, we open ourselves to positive emotions as well. A tiny thing we can do to start gradually accepting our painful emotions is to just check in with ourselves and ask, how does this feel like in my body right now? Number 5, savoring. We eat a delicious meal, but we scroll social media while having it. Savoring is really taking in the good things in our lives, no matter how small or tiny they are. And research shows that savoring these good things promotes a higher quality of life. These are the 3 ways we can savor the good things in our lives. A, mentally reflecting upon the positive past experiences. This is also called reminiscing. B, mindfully and completely engaging in a positive or good experience that is happening in the present. And C is contemplating a positive experience that is likely to happen in the future. Number 4 is balancing the neurochemical dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical in our brain that makes us feel good and motivated. There are several ways to balance it, and when we balance it, we experience a sense of well-being and feeling good throughout. We can do things like getting sunlight exposure in the morning, getting good sleep, exercise, and not stacking high dopamine activities to balance our dopamine levels. Number 3, exercise. It's a well-known fact that exercising releases a shit ton of feel-good emotions in our body and brain. And it's the fastest way to change how we feel. And we don't have to pump weights for an hour to experience the benefits. Just 20 minutes of walking should suffice. Number 2, gratitude. I used to believe that gratitude was cheesy, but Lately, I've been experimenting with it after I looked at the research and discovered its tremendous benefits. I've included a 2-minute gratitude exercise that we can do at the end of the day to experience all these benefits at the end of this video. And number one is social connection. The authors of the longest study on happiness, which started in 1930, write that people who are more connected to family, to friends, and to community are happier and physically healthier than the people who are less well connected. So instead of using the phone to scroll on social media, we can actually use it as a phone and call a friend to talk to them. So this is what the science had to offer us. Now let's look at why the Greeks thought having a good spirit helps us be more happy. Roman orator and philosopher Cicero called happiness summum bonum, that is the greatest value.
But according to the Greeks, there are two types of happiness. The first is hedonia. Hedonia, simply put, is a state of presence of pleasure and absence of pain. Examples of this would be eating a burger, watching a movie, or scrolling social media. Another characteristic of hedonia is that it's temporary. So the burger you ate could make you sick, the movie could have a shit ending, and doom scrolling through social media could leave you drained. The second one is eudaimonia. This is a more complex concept, and the closest translation would be well-being or flourishing. Eudaimonia suggests that humans have certain psychological needs and tendencies which must be fulfilled to experience a sense of well-being. So according to the Greeks, a happy life does not include just pleasure, but things like social engagement, moral virtue, self-mastery, and accomplishment of goals. So for instance, if we pursue self-mastery through learning a new language, there might come instances where we are struggling or are in pain because it's so difficult and uncomfortable. And then there might come incidences when we feel pleasure because we see progress in our journey. And despite these ups and downs, the progress in the long run leads us to be more happier in general. So the Greeks believed that pursuing a good spirit would make us happier. But the East, on the other hand, believed that we could be happy in this very instant.
There's an interesting word in the Hindi language called sukh. And on the face of it, it might seem like it means happiness or feeling happy, but it means something more permanent and not just a transient feeling like happiness. The closest translation of sukh would be contentment. Sukh or contentment is a different axis altogether. We can be sukhi despite being happy or sad. An example would be we are sad that a loved one has died, but we are okay with the sadness and their death. The same is true for dukh or discontentment. We can be dukhi despite having or feeling a lot of positive emotions. An example of that would be enjoying with our friends while feeling dead inside. So the question is, how can we become more content? And there are several paths to contentment, some of which are meditation, contemplation, surrender, letting go. But the basic principle behind it is acceptance. But the approach which I have found the most useful with acceptance is self-compassion. Just this week, I went on a trek, and despite covering my phone in plastic, water seeped into it and fucked my display. I used to record my videos on it, and so I felt this intense sense of despair as to what I'm going to do now. Because my brain is trained for self-compassion, this is what I did. I first acknowledged that I am suffering and feeling these emotions. And then I told myself with kindness that it's human to make a mistake or error. And it's human to feel sad on experiencing a loss, which was my phone. Journaling and talking to someone helped with this process. The three elements of compassion are a sense of kindness, acknowledging the suffering or emotion, and a sense of common humanity. And self-compassion isn't easy at first. But because our brains are plastic and they change, if we keep working on it, it'll become second nature and we'll start to become more content or sukhi. There's an amazing practice called compassionate journaling I learned in the book, The Compassionate Mind, which combines the power of journaling and self-compassion. I've included it in the next section.
We can include more of the 6 things that science suggests on a regular and daily basis in our lives. For increasing our gratitude, before sleeping, you can write down these three things from the day, which number one made me smile, number two, I am grateful for, and number three, a win or a success. And B, to follow the Greeks, we can engage in pursuits like mastery of any skill or pursuing the goals which matter to us for lasting happiness. And C, we can be more compassionate to ourselves to be more sukhi. The practice of compassionate journaling has helped me tremendously with that. These are the steps to that. Number one, when you're feeling like shit, just sit down with a pen and paper and do free writing. Free writing is when you just write and write whatever bubbles up from within without any consideration till your hands won't stop. Number two, after you feel like you're done pouring your heart on the paper, imagine a compassionate person you know, it might be a loved one or a friend, who is consoling you and justifying whatever you're feeling using these three elements of compassion. Number one, kindness. Number two, a sense of common humanity. And number three, acknowledgement of suffering. Write that down as well. An example from the book Compassionate Mind is this.